Well, Deepak, it's March 7th, 2019, and I'm the happiest person to be with you today, Deepak.
Thank you.
When they told me I had 12 to 18 months to live in February of 1993, one of the first things I did was call you up and head to Western Massachusetts. So couldn't be happier to see you here today.
Thank you, Mike. My honor.
So the best opening I could give you is about 2.5 years ago, there was a commission formed here in California, and it was called the Personalized Medicine Commission, and that we were going to personalize your treatment for medicine. About 9 months later, while we were working as a commissioner of this commission, the name was changed to Precision Medicine from personalized, and now we're going to personalize, but we're going to do it in a precision method due to the fact that we could sequence your genome, sequence your disease, etc. And before the report was completed, the name of the commission was changed one more time, and that was to the Precision Health Commission, with the idea that we were not only going to be able to match a treatment that matched your disease for success, but we have the potential to prevent you from getting the disease in the first place. And if I take you back to my visit to Deepak in 1993, there was this belief that you are what you eat, what you drink, what you exercise, whether you meditate, etc. This idea was met by enormous skepticism by the scientific community at the National Institutes of Health, at the National Cancer Institute, and the idea that lifestyle, not your genes, could have dramatically changed the length and quality of your life, and that it was the largest factor in healthcare costs. Well, when they said prove it, you couldn't prove it. Because if you looked at the sequencing, the first sequencing of the human genome, which kind of began in '93 and completed in 2003, took almost $3.8 billion. So you couldn't sequence anything. Today, with the dramatic drop in sequencing to less than $1,000, probably by the end of this year, less than $500, and ultimately someday you'll walk into a convenience store and they'll ask if you want your genome sequenced while you're looking to buy something, has opened up a whole new world, and the answer is yes, you can prove it. There's been numerous studies on this area showing you, and one at Thomas Jefferson University, which we've had operating for 4 years, that women that have had breast cancer, by not taking radiation or chemo, we can affect their cancer and put in remission by energizing their immune system. It's been a long journey, I would say to you, the skepticism. Bill Fair, who ran at the time oncology at Memorial Sloan Kettering, met David Heber for the first time in 1994 at our scientific retreat, and I had to overrule the people putting on the scientific retreat because they considered nutrition and other things not a science. Junk science, they called it. Eventually, we reached a compromise. David, who had a PhD, MD, etc., and founded the Center for Human Nutrition, could speak at lunch, not on the formal program, so it wouldn't be an entire embarrassment to our scientific retreat. And if they didn't want to hear David, they could sit farther enough away that they didn't have to hear his ideas. Well, it changed Bill Fair's life forever, that 1-hour talk, as he changed the way they treated cancer patients and himself at Memorial. It has been a long journey, and it hasn't been an easy journey. When we think about nutrition and exercise, we discovered recently in Asia, when you had who was funding the programs in this area, that were all directed to exercise. And yes, there's a lot of cute jokes that were put forth to convince you it wasn't what you ate, but it was just your exercise. one that I liked the best was a doctor that asked you, what is more of interest to you? 1 hour a day of exercise or 24 hours a day of being dead? Your choice. And so what we discovered is many of the fast food companies were the major funders of this work, but particularly many of the soft drink manufacturers were the largest funder of this work, telling you it's not what you ate, but whether you did exercise. And so eat whatever you want and just get exercise from that standpoint. In closing, as I move to Deepak here, I want to point out the tale of two companies. If we take a look at Nestle, the world's most valuable consumer products company that doesn't do pharma products in the world, they didn't pick their COO or their chief executive for their chief executive officer. They went outside Nestle and picked a person that was the CEO of a healthcare company, and he announced that Nestle is going to become a healthcare company. They were totally destroyed on social media. First, they give you diabetes, and then they're going to be a healthcare company. So they were the 360. Well, Nestle has sold their chocolate business, taken other actions, worked hard to change their product line, and today, Nestle stock hit an all-time high. On the other hand, one of the great companies in America, Kraft Heinz, who didn't dramatically change its product line, stock continues to hit new lows. Similar industry, different strategy. So with that, Deepak, I just trying to think back to those days in March of '93. I brought Tom Laughlin with me, if you remember, who had done Billy Jack and believed in Carl June, and Michael Jackson.
Yes.
My wife Lori came, and others. And the idea that mind-body can affect your health, the idea that you can change how your genes are reflected by changing your microbiome. It was not able to prove it as Deepak went in this direction, and as I moved our efforts there. But I'm living proof of the benefits. And Deepak, let's start with the 6 pillars you've talked to me about over the years.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to suggest that we revise the precision health to precision well-being.
Okay, I'm sure, even though we submitted the commission report, that you're allowed to go redact it and change it.
Change it to well-being, because well-being is more than health. If I asked anyone in this audience right now to rate the quality of their life from 1 to 10, 10 being the best ever, and 1 being the worst ever, and you don't have to think about it, just give yourself a number right now, mentally, the quality of your life. If you said 8, 9, or 10, your future is amazingly good, you're thriving. If you said 5, 6, 7, you're struggling in some area of your life. If you were less than 5, you're suffering, and you're actually going to get a diagnosis that you don't like. It's that simple. These are the 6 pillars of well-being that I've been talking to Michael about. And what I want to say is the future of well-being is precision, it's personalized, it's predictable, it's preventable, it's participatory, and it's a process. And if I were to identify 6 things that are measurable, that can make a dramatic difference in your longevity and the quality of your life, these are the 6. So movement, at least 10,000 steps a day. And it doesn't have to be vigorous. It doesn't have to be so you're sweating, comfortable movement. Yoga and breathing exercises, for the simple reason that yoga introduces mind-body coordination. There's a very important nerve in your body called the vagus nerve. And it's related, the word vagus is related to the English word vagabond. So the vagus nerve goes to every organ in the body, starting from your 10th cranial nerve. It influences your facial expression, your eye movements, your tone of voice, whether you're happy or not, your heart rate variability, pierces the diaphragm, goes to every organ in the body. and causes regulation. Right now, our world is on what we call sympathetic overdrive. Too much stress, too much inflammation. You mentioned genomics. We now know for sure something we didn't know even 10 years ago. Only 5% of disease-related gene mutations, and I'm being very specific here, 5% of disease-related gene mutations. So a mutation is a genetic mistake, an error. Only 5% are fully penetrant, which means they guarantee the disease. So if somebody has a gene like the BRCA gene that Angelina Jolie had, she had to have a mastectomy as a prevention because that particular gene aberration predicts breast cancer no matter what you do. But that's 5% of all illness, all chronic illness, not just cancer, autoimmune illness, propensity to infections, you name it, only 5% of gene mutations predicted. The rest are covered by lifestyle. You can influence those genes, you can change their behavior, and this is what we now call epigenetics. So with mind-body coordination, with the proper stimulation of the vagal nerve, selectively targeting it to different organs, and there are new devices that are being created to replicate this even without the yoga. So you can actually put a magnetic implant somewhere on your skin, stimulate the vagus nerve selectively through a digital device, through your iPhone or Android. It can cause self-regulation in any organ of the body. 5% are predictable. The rest are connected to what we call low-grade inflammation. Not acute inflammation, low-grade inflammation that occurs as a result of lack of one of these things that are on the projection right now. So either you're not moving enough, or you have too much stress and you don't know how to handle it, or you have emotions that disrupt biological self-regulations, emotions like anxiety, anger, hostility, guilt, shame, depression, they all disrupt biological regulation. We now know that actually love, compassion, joy, empathy, peace, equanimity causes the opposite, which is self-regulation and healing. Nutrition, just like your doctor friends, I never believed my patients when they came to see me and they said, I changed my diet and my arthritis went away. I changed my diet and my
Wait a minute, Deepak,
asthma went
you didn't
away.
believe me all those years when I was telling you these things?
This is before I met you. I never
Okay,
believed
all right.
anyone because I didn't know how to explain it. But now we know as soon as you put your food into your body, as soon as it enters your mouth, it interacts with the microbiome, which is 2 million to 20 million extra genes that you have. Only 25,000 genes that you have are human. So you have 150 times and more proportionate bacterial genes in your body, mostly in your gut, but also in your skin and everywhere else, that are bacterial. You can not only change the behavior of these genes, you can change the population of these genes by changing your diet.
And it takes, you can start to change your microbiome within 7 days.
Correct. And once you do that, you're actually changing the genetic information in your body. Now, the human genes that you have, the 25,000 human genes, they can also be modified through what we now call epigenetics, which means every experience that you have leaves a biological imprint, whether it's sleep or dreams or social interaction or personal relationship or whatever. So the reason I said revise this to well-being and not just health, because we have many components to well-being: career well-being, professional well-being, financial well-being, social well-being, emotional well-being, physical well-being, community well-being, and they're inseparable. If you're worried about your finances, your blood pressure is going to go up. Your platelets are going to get sticky. You're going to have lots of adrenaline in your system. You're going to have inflammation. So well-being has to be looked at holistically, and these are the most important things, which I think is intuitive. If you don't have a good sleep, your biology is going to be disrupted. What people don't know right now much about is the last item here, which is called grounding. So our biological rhythms are part of the rhythms of the cosmos. As the Earth spins on its axis, we have circadian rhythms, which gets disrupted, say, when somebody has jet lag, or your biological rhythms also change with the seasons. They change with the tides, with the gravitational tides. They change with the cycles of the moon. This can all be documented. Your body is a part of the symphony of the universe, and your biology is dancing to the symphony, even though you can't hear the tune.
So Deepak, I want to just talk about how far we've come. If you visited the National Cancer Institute in '93, the group they disliked the most were people making cigarettes. The group they disliked second most, the most disliked group after cigarette manufacturers, were people promising you that by changing your diet, changing what you eat or drink, it could affect your cancer. Today, it's a major component in almost every cancer center in the United States. Now, the challenges are significant. And one thing we don't really reflect on from an economic standpoint is more than 50% of all economic growth in the last 200 years can be traced essentially to health, well-being, or medical research. In 4 million years of human evolution, you extended life 11 years. Average life expectancy went from 20 to 31. In the last 120 years, we've increased life expectancy from 31 on this planet to approaching 75 in just 115 years. And so this acceptance today, you can see in the financial markets, but you can see in thousands of new food tech companies that are addressing this. Nobel Prize winners like Elizabeth Blackburn, who've been given Nobel Prize in many cases for work in telomeres, showing you increasing sugar shortens your lifespan. We published a report about 4.5 years ago that 2 soft drinks a day on average would shorten your life by 4 years. If you're concerned you're going to live too long, just increase your sugar intake from that standpoint. And so we're in a different world today. And so, Deepak, I want to take you to the future. Let's look at these 7 trends that you have really been speaking about, starting with humanizing AI and going forward. So if you could take us through those 7 trends that we have: augmented lifestyle, rise of intelligence, etc. Take us through these.
Well, these are all happening right now. So you can have an artificial intelligence robot as a doctor, and that robot will make a better diagnosis than a cardiologist or an oncologist or anyone else. It will also learn about you and make your treatment very precise. In fact, there's a project right now where I'm creating a bot of myself that can speak to 7 billion people at the same time and personalize the conversation. But this is going to happen with health coaches, with nutritionists, with philosophers, with financial advisors,
radiologists, etc.
Radiologists. The second thing is, now because of the Internet of Well-being and the Internet of all things, you can have automated biological sustainability in your home. I live in an apartment in New York where we already have this device called Darwin that shifts the temperature in the room, the air ambience in the room, the quality of air, water, posture, pedic, floors, all passively making sure that my biological activity is sustainable. So we used to change the biology in response to the environment. Darwinian evolution is about that. But now you can change the environment to respond to your biology as well. They can have back and forth. And then, of course, there's going to be blockchain crypto movements where people can engage online and offline on well-being and their aspirations, the dream, because you mentioned longevity. The fastest growing segment of the American population today is over the age of 100, the fastest growing segment of the American population. So if we don't do something about this, we're going to be, of course, riddled with Alzheimer's. On the other hand, we can increase health span and lifespan through biofeedback. And that brings us to these event-driven and context-aware platforms that data gets aggregated into your ecosystem of well-being, which could be a crypto system as well. And so you could participate through social engagement in longevity and the quality of life. And then now with immersive, augmented experiences and dreamscapes, I think in 5 years, a doctor is probably not going to give you a pharmaceutical. He's going to have you go through an immersive, augmented reality, virtual reality experience that shifts your body image. For example, if somebody has anorexia or bulimia, or somebody has inflammation, how to give you an experience where there is no inflammation. Somebody has burns, immerse you in ice-cold water as an immersive experience. So I see VR and augmented reality experiences as treatment. And ultimately, I see brain in computer interfaces. So we see through deep learning everything that we can know about you at the level of body, mind, and environment. So we can predict which genes are responsive to your diet, whatever it is. There's no universal diet for anyone. You might think, oh, spinach is good for me, but if you don't have the enzyme that metabolizes oxalate, then spinach is going to give you kidney stones and cause inflammation. So that kind of precision is coming now.
In many of our studies, Deepak, I want to follow up on this before we go to the last 2 points. One, we discovered maybe 25% of people that dramatic changes in their diet substantially reduces the growth rate of their cancer or puts it in remission. But we also found that for 25% of people, it doesn't seem to have that effect. And I just wanted to stress the point you were making. Second, about 25 years ago, we put up this slide of what was the pharmacy of the future. And we had sent it to over 2,000 researchers, and we told them this was the pharmacy of the future. Now, you couldn't prove anything. You couldn't direct it. But today, we have seen a strain of super broccoli that for some cancers, it has about 2,000, you'd have to eat about 2,000 times as much if it wasn't this strain, which looks for some cancers to put them totally in remission just by eating this broccoli. And so this effort of augmented reality, and whether that is music, smells, sounds, etc., they're all attempting to affect your immune system through energizing. And if you say, okay, why did I get cancer? Generally one of 3 areas. One, your immune system didn't recognize the cancer. It was disguised. It was cloaked. 2, as Deepak pointed out, your immune system was compromised, inflammation. And in more than 60% of cancer, you have inflammation. Or 3, your immune system was essentially turned off. And this year, Jim Allison won a Nobel Prize for turning on your immune system, which then dealt with your cancer. Let's get back to the last 2.
Yeah, we'll get back to them, but I want to go back to the slide you just showed. So can you go back to the slide that Mike just showed?
The supermarket?
The supermarket.
Maybe this is why Amazon is so focused on supermarkets.
Yeah. So let's go back on that slide, the one with the colors. Here. So what you notice here is maximum diversity of color and maximum diversity of taste, therefore. The color is due to something called phytochemicals. The word phyto means light, and phytochemicals are chemicals derived from the energy of the sun, which is the basis of life on our planet. So these are actually all superfoods because they have super chemicals of life. Now, once we identify these super chemicals, like you have the super broccoli, there's now super curcumin. You'd have to eat 2 years' worth of curry powder to get the equivalent of a teaspoon of super curcumin that dramatically decreases taste. I'll send you some. It dramatically reduces inflammation. All of this can be documented. Go back to my last 2 slides and we'll finish. And basically what I'm saying in this last 2 slides is because every experience can be digitally seen in the brain, in the body, at the level of genes, at the level of metabolites, at the level of inflammation. We are moving from what we called physical medicine, which was looking at organs, into biomolecular medicine, which is looking at the molecules, now looking at information and energy medicine, and finally able to hack every experience that you have in your consciousness and modify that experience through various beings. So this has
Deepak,
been my journey for the last 45 years.
Yes, and I think I'd like to just go to number 4 here for a moment. I know this is something you're totally focused on today, is this concept of consciousness and analyzing. So in closing, let's spend a couple minutes on that.
So right now, if you go on the internet and you type out what are the 150 open questions in science, the number 1 question in science today, open question, is what's the universe made of? And the short answer is, it's made of nothing. So then the question is, why does it look like this? That's called the hard problem of consciousness. We don't know how to explain experience through brain science. Is our brain the source of our consciousness, or is our brain actually picking up consciousness, which is fundamental in the universe? That's where we're going. And a few people are hinting at that through movies that you and I have both seen, like Avatar, The Matrix, and so on. And the hard problem of consciousness says that consciousness is fundamental in the universe, and we are one data point in that consciousness. So before I end, I'd like to ask you a question to give you a demonstration of what I really mean. So the question is, are you here right now? Can you be a little more enthusiastic? Are you here right now?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you the same question, but don't answer it till I raise my hand. Are you here right now?
Yes.
Okay, so the gap between 2 experiences is where consciousness is. It's a still presence, which is the source of all our ideas. Everything you're talking about here is about ideas, and ideas are infinite. Every idea can lead to an infinite number of ideas. The source of ideas is human consciousness. And we're ignoring that, but that's going to be the next frontier of science.
Well, thank you, Deepak, for joining us today. And you know, one of the exciting things, Deepak, as your ideas become mainstream, you move on to other challenges, etc. And when you see the Matrix, you hope we're not a program. So thank you very much.
Thank you.